I'm just trying to make a real German. Uh,
And, well, that's Italian. Wait.
Bernhard Leitner, welcome to Tool or Die. You're joining us on a special day. Alex just got back from New Zealand and was bitten by a venomous spider. So he could be dying. This could be the last time anybody ever gets to see Alex Roy, which some people may be okay with.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, we'll see. Happy to have you on. You are the founder and owner of Leitner Designs. You're a designer first who got into manufacturing. You make truck racks, arguably kickstarted the consumer category for adventure racks in the camping, overlanding space. But I wanted to start by asking you about your dad. Your dad was another racer engineer type. What was his story? What did you learn from him?
Yeah, so I mean, my dad's story, especially based around U.S. manufacturing, didn't even start in the USA. So we immigrated from Austria in 1980. Now, my dad had he was a professional enduro racer. So he raced a race that he did really good at. It's called the International 6 Days Enduro, the ISDE. And you can see it if you're into motorcycles. You can watch the movie on any Sunday. There's a lot of that in there.
Paul Newman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And he basically won that thing 4 years in a row, 1960, 61, 62, 63. And so he was really good at what he did and enjoyed it. And with that success he got from, racing and the money he made from it, got a lot of corporate sponsorships from Bull Taco. He raced for Bull Taco. He raced for KTM. He raced a Matchless. A lot of these companies aren't even around anymore, but he raced for them. And with that success, basically, he started car dealerships. He just figured, he's a born salesman, and he could run car dealerships. And that was kind of an interesting, because I mean, really, what he's good at is engineering. If you ever met him, he's not a salesman, but he thought he was.
I mean, if he could sell enough to have a delership, then he was a good enough
He had
salesman.
four. He had four dealerships.
And this was in Austria?
This was in Austria. Yeah, he had four car dealerships, he had a Chrysler, a Ford, an NSU, and another one. I don't even know. But he had four car dealerships. And then basically he was doing really well with the fame he had from racing. He was famous in Europe, and the ISD doesn't happen here in the US much, but he was famous in Europe. So he had a good name in the industry, and started these car dealerships. And then, the 1970s come around and the world goes into a gas crunch, right? And cars didn't sell well, especially in Austria, where they gave you a sticker and you could drive it twice a week.
Yeah, I would think selling Chryslers in Austria in the gas crunch would be tough.
It apparently, I was just a child back then, but so he decided, hey, he raced motorcycles. He had a bunch of good ideas for how to make motorcycles better, how to make the suspension perform better. And he knew that the market for such a product and such a motorcycle was not going to be in Europe. It was going to happen in the United States. The motorcycle market in the U.S. is so much larger than anywhere else in the world. He knew he needed to move and basically take what he had and move the entire family, which is, there's four kids, my mom and dad. And for some reason we brought a cousin along. So we moved to the United States around 1980, and we all moved into a motorhome. And my dad drove this invention with a motorcycle trailer in tow to every racetrack in the United States.
And what was this invention? It was a suspension part, right?
It was a suspension part. So, I mean, he did a lot of stuff, but the first thing he had was called 8-track. And it was basically, if you're a motorcycle rider and you get on the gas hard, what happens is your suspension, your rear wheel will try to suck up into your fender. And when you let off the throttle, the rear end jacks apart. And if you come into a corner, the rear end hops. And you'll see GP racers come into a corner and the rear end will hop. They tried to solve it now with a slipper clutch, which prevents torque going to the rear wheel. But he solved it a different way. The torque went to the rear wheel, but it just kept the swing arm moving normally. And the power train didn't make the suspension go up and down. So if you're doing hill climbs, desert racing, road racing, coming into a corner, you could lay on the throttle and the suspension didn't jack up and, high side you. and he had some good luck with there's a famous school, the Superbiker School here in Southern California, run by a guy named Keith Code.
Yeah, pretty legendary guy,
He's
actually. Yeah.
legendary, and he's just a good guy. And he picked this thing up from my dad, and my dad showed it to him, and he put it on every motorcycle he let his students ride, because he said this is safe, because it was, you have a school and you have amateurs or people that want to get faster, and he was the biggest proponent for this, and he wanted this on all his bikes, and he had limited success with the with it. I mean, he did pretty good, but nobody was asking the question. Nobody knew that was the suspension was doing this.
Now, I do ride, so I got to get a little nerdy into this.
Go for it.
Was it an additional, like a strut or like a steering stabilizer gets put on the front sometimes, or was it replacing the rear suspension with his design?
So, well, yeah. So basically, the production unit was all it was two rollers right by the front countershaft, and it kept the chain perfectly parallel with the swing arm. So when you accelerated, the force went into the swing arm this way, and not from the bigger rear sprocket down to the smaller, causing this angle. That's what causes that chain angle versus the swing arm angle. Small sprocket on the front, big sprocket on the back. So he mounted these two rollers on the front, kept it parallel. Now you could get on the gas as hard as you want, and or brake or decelerate with the engine braking, and the suspension was neutral. But then that's what he was always going for.
That's awesome.
So it was an add-on part.
So he has those. He's got some success with it, but yeah, it's hard to sell a product to people who, honestly, too, the people that mostly want that are people that are really going for it, and not everybody are really going for it on a motorcycle. So where did that leave him?
Around 81, 82, a company called Can-Am was actually still producing motorcycles in the United States, right? They don't do that anymore.
They're thinking about it.
I think they're thinking about it, but I've seen some prototype stuff. But they're thinking about it. They're famous for their, for their side-by-sides now. And they're, but anyways, Can-Am was still around in business, and they're like, hey, we're going out of business. We need a new motorcycle. And so they hired my dad to design them from the ground up, every part, frame, swing arm, everything, and design this whole motorcycle. And they paid my dad to design this. Just as the contract is up, Can-Am goes belly up. And with it, every Can-Am dealer in the United States goes belly up because they don't have any motorcycles to sell. So my dad is like, hey, wait a minute. I have a motorcycle. It's sitting right here. I designed it. It's from the ground up. It's really cool. So he just put an ATK sticker on it and basically goes, okay, we're not going to call it Can-Am now because the company went belly up and they didn't care. They never even got the final design. So he rebadged this whole motorcycle he engineered as ATK motorcycles and went to every Can-Am dealer going, hey, here's a poster. Stick this on top of your Can-Am sign and you can be an ATK dealer. You don't have to go out of business today. And that's how he started the motorcycle company called ATK.
Did he have any manufacturing capability when he was out trying to get customers from these failing Can-Am dealers?
I don't think, as far as his manufacturing capability, he had the tiniest little shop. It was like 1,000 square feet. And, he was putting out a bike a week, then 2 bikes, then 3 bikes. I think the maximum ATK ever produced was around 800 motorcycles a year. But at the time, because there was only Harley Davidson, so he was the second largest motorcycle manufacturer in the United States because that was the only thing that existed, right? There was only Harley. Indian wasn't around anymore, and all the other guys had gone out. So he was at one point with 800 motorcycles a year, the second largest motorcycle manufacturer in the United States.
I presume you've still got a couple bikes sitting around.
I have all of my favorites. I have the one I rode to high school, which was like a full race bike with a license plate we stuck on it.
I mean, as far as lessons you learned, you definitely saw how to pivot and also saw how to spot some market opportunities. But this is in the 80s, so you guys are still in California.
We are.
Mm-hmm. Let's fast forward a little bit to where that led you from a design standpoint. kicking off your career, did you start in motorsports and auto and things like that, or were you off in another direction for a while?
Well, I mean, growing up in a family that raced motocross every weekend, I raced motocross every weekend, right? Desert races, motocross. So I started out off in that. And yes, I mean, when I was a kid, I would every day, after work, after school, I worked for my dad till closing time. That was what I had to do to help my dad out, which was fine. That's where I learned everything I learned. I mean, he would just set, my dad wasn't the greatest teacher in the world, but he goes, here's every tool you would ever need. Weld, grind, cut tubes, just do whatever you want. And so I was just like tinkering on motorcycles and anything I could build. I was building just all sorts of stupid stuff out of parts he had laying around. That's kind of that's where basically my love for the whole designing, building kind of started. So
Yeah, not to denigrate people that have a, more academic design career, but there's definitely something to be said for growing up around tools and growing up around parts to just not even have somebody question that design is a thing you got to learn. It's just a thing you do. Like, how do I figure out how to put this together?
And in my career, I've hired a lot of engineers, and they're all schooled engineers, and they're great, but their schooling starts when they get out of college. That's what happens.
So for a while, you were working as a designer for other companies. What kind of stuff were you designing?
Man, this is a long, long list of stuff I did. I worked for a company called Innovation Sports, and they're famous in the motorcycle industry too, but they're a knee brace company. The founder of that company, Jim Castillo, broke his knee, motorcycle rider. The doctor said, you'll never, ever ride again. And he goes, nope, I'm going to build a knee brace and I'm going to keep riding. Started a huge company. I mean, I worked there, had hundreds of employees, and he was just making knee braces for the motorsports and for the medical industry, making these knee braces where people had knee injuries could keep walking. He was one of the founders of like knee braces. I don't think they had knee braces prior to him making a carbon fiber titanium knee brace.
This is why I'm laughing, because I immediately was questioning how much medical gear has been built from racers who broke something and were like,
Yeah.
I've got to figure out how to fix my body.
And it happens all the time. Not to get off subject, but I don't know if you can see it, but I have
You look a little swollen.
well, it's plated from here. So this is one. So I just broke this 6 weeks ago. So I'm just trying to get back on the bike. Yeah, I just got 10 screws and a plate in there. So I'm learning to put a thumb throttle on my bike because I have no wrist motion. So
Oh, that's funny.
but I'm going to learn that. I'm going to figure that out. So
You'll figure it out, or you'll invent a device that will allow you to do it. So you're working for a knee brace company. What else do you do?
So I was working for a knee brace company, and on the side, because I like designing stuff, I was taking jobs. Any people through the motorcycle industry were asking me to design all sorts of stuff. Kind of funny. They'd come in because they were professional racers, and they're like, hey, I'm starting an exhaust company. I need an intake system. I need a brake lever. I need, the cylinder ported, and I need the machine set up. And I'm like, I can do all that, right? And so that kind of led into me. That's actually where Leitner Designs started in 2005, because I found, I'm like, well, B-Tax, I'm going to start a company and just base it around designing. That's why it's called Leitner Designs. I design stuff. And yeah, I just started designing lots of different products for mostly, it's still in the motorcycle industry and a little bit in the automotive industry. And then I started designing cell phone cases. I know, but they're mountable to motorcycles, so you can see your phone while you're riding. Obviously, that's what I would want, right? So I had these snap little lock systems that you could snap to anything, cars and motorcycles. And that company's still around. They're doing well.
What's that company called?
It's called Rockform, Rokform.
So you're doing a bunch of contract design, and it sounds like you built a lot of stuff that you could see turn into a business. I presume, like Rockform, you probably sold once it got to a certain point. What made you go, all right, racks for trucks? This is a business that I want to just start, but not only do I want to start it, I'm going to own it and operate it.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because again, I mean, like they say, I mean, necessity is the mother of all invention. It was so simple. I had imported a 1973 military truck from the Austrian army, because that's where I'm from. And I'm like, I'm going to turn this into a rad overland rig and build a trailer for it. And I did. And I was like, the thing didn't go very fast, and it had 6 wheels, and it was loud and didn't have air conditioning, and I was like, "Okay." So I drove it to Alaska and then all the way back down. Took me a couple of months. The thing, top speed on that thing was like 45 miles an hour. After that, I'm like, "You know what? I need to buy a Tacoma, a Toyota Tacoma." It is like what everyone that overlands buys is a Tacoma. It's dead reliable. Everyone likes it. So I bought one and started kitting it out, and lo and behold, none of the products I wanted existed. There wasn't a rack that still let me put a motorcycle in the back. It was just this cage that ruined your functionality. It didn't have any side-mounted toolboxes to keep my motorcycle gear or my recovery gear. And it didn't have anything I really wanted. I wanted all these modules that could snap on and snap off and just be not just for the overland market, but basically for anyone. And it didn't exist. And I literally just walked around to machine shops and asked, and hey, can you make this? And because I didn't have a shop. And they're like, no, we don't even know what you're talking about. And I quit my job that day. And I didn't like give them, I mean, I gave 2 weeks notice, but it wasn't like I had a company. I didn't even figured anything out yet. I'm going to do this today.
Like early 2010s, somewhere like that. When did this rack stuff actually start? Because you had the company before.
Yeah. So the whole rack thing started in 2014. Mm-hmm.
So I come from this world a little bit, and just to set it for people who don't really know trucks, like trucks having a rack on the back is very old, back to the point of people doing it out of 2x4s and things in the 30s and 40s. And then you have ladder racks, which are kind of more utilitarian. A lot of times go up over the top. You see a lot of the guys you'll see, like contractors and things running around, will have a ladder rack in the back. But within the overlanding space, adventure space, whatever you want to call it, at the time, rooftop tents were a big factor. And so there
They
wasn't
were.
something that was really built with that in mind. So you're like, screw it, I'm gonna make it. I've got a good design. What was your time from being like, this is a opportunity, I know I can design it, to when you had the first prototype and then product for sale?
I move fast. So, I mean, I feel like I moved fast back then. I feel like now I'm at more of a standstill, but I went to prototype in about 6 weeks. It was all steel. I hand welded it. I had a local laser cut shop, bend all the parts, and then I bent the tubes on a little mandrel bender I had and welded it up. And I go, okay, that's not bad. And then I made a second prototype, all out of aluminum this time, 6 weeks later. And then I talked to a friend of my dad. He does a lot of marketing and sales over there. And he's like, this thing needs to be all aluminum. It needs to be all extruded. You need to just go to the wall. You can't just make something kind of good. You got to just go all the way in, or don't go at all. And I go, well, that's going to take a long time. But I was able to actually get a website up from the time I started. I got 6 months till I sold my first product. So, but I only made them for Tacoma short bits. So now I make them for every vehicle.
Let's talk about, like, I want to get into like the manufacturing part a little bit more. The original ACS, active cargo system, is extruded aluminum. It bolts, the mounting, it doesn't matter so much to me, but it bolts into the bed. And then you have a bunch of different gear pods, is that what you call them, that are units that connect over onto the sides. Those aren't all aluminum though, right? Like a lot of that is plastic. And
That's all plastic. That's all rotomolded. So that's all locally done here down in Southern California.
tell me about that part, right? Like, so you're building the prototypes yourself. You've got stuff ready. You're getting ready to take orders. Great. But you're not building every part of this, because it's more than you have the capabilities for in your shop. So things like the gear pods that are rotomolded, how did you go find suppliers locally? Because you're trying to keep most of your manufacturing local or in the U.S.
Yeah. So again, I had a huge advantage. My dad ran a motorcycle company, but he also ran an automotive company called Amp Research. I'm sure you guys can look it up. Makes all the power steps, makes a lot of OE products. Funny enough, the guy that made the gas tank for his motorcycles back in the 80s, I called him and he goes, yeah, I'm still in business. Let's make some parts. Like, it was like I just reached out to a lot of these vendors that my dad had used in the past. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It really gave me a leg up. I'd already been in the industry designing and making all these different products for so long, but that really helped out. Just helping engineer and design all these other products for all these other companies prior to doing my own. I used all that knowledge.
Can you give people who don't have a good understanding of the Southern California manufacturing scene a snapshot of what some of the capabilities are. So much of it obviously comes from motorsports and aftermarket cars, and it's the global home of so much of that industry. But what kind of capabilities are there, and how do people interact with it?
It is such a hotbed of manufacturers. I talk to friends that live in Texas, and they're like, I have 3 CNC shops or 5 CNC shops. I have 500 CNC shops. Like, there's no, but it all started, I think, back when there was still McDonnell Douglas down here. But that's not there anymore. But all the airplanes used to be manufactured down here. Then it turned into motorsports. Ford has their advanced design down here too. Hyundai has their advanced design down here. All the manufacturing is here. It's within a 30-mile radius is where probably 75% of my product is made. Within 30 miles of this shop, everything from the forgings to the castings to the injection molded parts to the die cast parts to all the powder coat, all the different coatings we use, zinc plating, everything is within, the fasteners are East Coast, some other stuff, but it's all U.S.
A lot of our audience does come from outside of California, right? And as in this moment where we're trying to reshore and rebuild a lot of the U.S., just getting connected is a big factor, right? So many of these
Mm-hmm.
small job shops, maybe they only ever had 20 or 30 customers throughout their whole life, and now they would be willing to take on more business, but they are hard to get a hold of. Do you have any idea of how people could get a sense? Are there any sort of regional trade groups or anything that people could interface with to get access to some of this California manufacturing?
Word of mouth. Talking, going to shops, and they're so nice. Sometimes I'm like, hey, can you make this part? Nope, but my buddy owns a machine down there. It's a lot bigger than mine. He'll make it. So, and it is, tribal knowledge of me being in this type of industry for over like 40 years, 40 years of just meeting all those people.
So your second product, you decided that not all of it, but at least I believe the corner pieces were going to be forged. Now, why did you, from a design standpoint, say forged is going to be the method that we need to improve the product?
Everyone knows California is not an inexpensive place to manufacture, right? It's a great place to manufacture if you need everything at your fingertips because it's all here, but it is expensive, and especially labor rates are very expensive. And our first ACS, which we call the ACS Classic, had, hours and hours of aluminum welding in it, all TIG welded. It looked beautiful, but it cost an arm and a leg to produce, and we couldn't make very many. We had an army of welders welding, running through gas, welding rod, huge shop, electric bill. And I'm like, wait a minute, why don't we get rid of all the welding? It not only is it going to be stronger because the welds don't crack, it's going to be a lot simpler to manufacture. So that was the genesis of going from one to the other. It was just, hey, we got to keeping costs down while manufacturing in the state of California.
Had you ever done anything with forged metal pieces before?
I had done a lot of castings, no real forgings before. Yeah, I was really good with sand castings, die castings, that kind of stuff. But this was probably this was my first forged part I did. Mm-hmm.
So you're like, forged is going to be the way that we're going to do the 2.0 version. What did you have to go learn? Who did you go talk to? What were the surprises?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first off, I just did a lot of research online, right? I didn't want to, before I started design, I try to familiarize myself as much as I can. It's the hardest. It's so easy to make a part and so easy to design a part and so impossible to make a part. It's easy to draw something and 3D print it, but to actually make it feasible and cost effective in production is difficult. I familiarized myself with it online, talked to a bunch of friends in the industry, especially over at Ford Motor Company that does a ton of forgings. And yeah, I mean, it took me probably 6 or 7 tries with different vendors that when we finally were able to say, okay, this design will work and we can make that particular part.
Where were some of the shortcomings? Like, were people able to do it but couldn't do it at the volume you needed? Was it they could do it but the quality wasn't there? Like, not to throw anybody under the bus, but like, what were some of the common mistakes?
And it was all of the above that you just mentioned. So the forging I designed, and they told me they could do it, right? They wanted the business, but it was deep. It was a deep forging, so we had to get aluminum about 5 inches into this cavity on the other side, and the aluminum just did not want to flow in there. Now, A-arms and that kind of stuff, they're generally relatively flat, and they have some divots, but they're flat, longer parts. Mine was, if you look at the part, just had this leg sticking off that was like 5 inches tall. And that's what everything bolted to. Well, they couldn't get the aluminum to flow in there. And we had nothing but problems re-engineering that, tapers, and getting the right draft angle, and actually bending the billet of aluminum prior. So there was already a bend. So when they hit it with the forge, it was already in the correct angle to shove it up in there. It took quite a while. And then when they finally got it down, they said they couldn't make it because they can make it, but it was too inefficient.
Inefficient in their man hours, or just inefficient?
I guess they had a lot of rejects. They could not get that material. They got it to work, 80% of the time, but the other 20, I guess, was costing them a lot of money. So then they kept increasing the price on it, which, that'll happen.
So you got it done eventually because you have a forged product now.
We did have it for 2 years, struggling, trying to make it. So we still call the new product, it still has a bunch of forged components on it with the struts and the rear brackets and all that. But that part that we could not forge efficiently is now cast right down the street. It's a permanent mold casting. I went with a casting process now. We still call it the ACS forged, but it is now a cast part. And it's so overkill. It did not affect the strength. And yeah, forging stronger, but it was so overkill. It's still plenty strong.
There's a bunch of change in the market. As we're recording, there's been new steel and aluminum tariffs, a lot of things that are unknown. But the impetus behind a lot of that from the Trump administration is to try to get more American manufacturing. You are at what are you at from the percentage of parts used that are U.S. based?
We're in the mid 90s, like 90. It fluctuates, but we can safely say it's 94 to 96% of all items monetarily. So that's not by part count, but monetarily 94, 95% of all of our product is made in the United States.
Where and your goal, obviously, from you personally, is to be 100%. But like everybody that's trying to hit 100%, there's some areas where it's just hard or impossible to get things that are U.S. supplied. What are some of the things that you haven't been able to solve yet?
Well, I mean, I think what happens is if you're already deeply embedded with an overseas manufacturer and they have been making a good part, it can be difficult to move to the U.S., especially if that tooling exists. So I think a lot of people don't understand that. If a casting tooling exists in Asia, there's no guarantee that if you ship this all the way to the United States, it will ever even work in the United States. The presses are different, the material's different. You might spend all the money shipping it here and just make a new tool. So moving tooling from Asia is also difficult. But the one product that we make in Asia that we cannot get made here, and it's called our gear bag. It goes inside the gear pod. It's this cool, Gore-Tex outside bag with a zipper and all this Velcro and these little patches and stuff. It's made out of EVA foam, so it's like a hard case. There is not an EVA manufactured in the United States currently. And yes, we could make it out of this floppy material, but that is one of the main products right now that we continue to source in Asia.
If you think it's bad in metal or plastic, trying to get into anything that is textile based in the U.S. is next to impossible. It just doesn't exist.
It does exist to some level. There are companies, but it just depends what you want. You can't get EVA foam in the United States, to my understanding, and I've researched it. You can get some stuff sewn, some simple bags and stuff like that. But yeah, that is probably the hardest thing to get in the U.S. right now.
Tell me what it's like being a company owner in the U.S., making a product in the U.S. That probably has a ton of lower quality competitors in the market. How do what's worked best for you to get your story out to the people that actually care about that? Do you think people care about it at scale enough for it to matter? How do you address that? Because that problem, whether you're in your category or another category, is pretty universal.
Well, I think it's pretty simple. So what we concentrate on here is customer service. It's that after sale customer service. You buy something on eBay, wherever, Alibaba, wherever, and you get it and it doesn't work. What do you do? I mean, they can reach us every single day. We have a customer service team. You will get a response. If you call us between business hours, we will pick up that phone and we will if you're missing a part, we next day air it to you. If there's something wrong, I will personally get on the phone with you and talk you through how to fix it. So I think people have lost that kind of like, oh, it's cheap, it's made in Asia, let's buy it. But I am of the tribe that says, like, buy once, cry once. I buy the best of everything. I never skimp on a single thing. People are like, you spent what? I'm like, yeah, well, it's the best one, and I don't have to buy it twice. And it saves me money because there's less headache going, well, that one didn't work, I'll buy this one. And I don't think people understand that they're trying to save money by going cheap, and then it ends, anything cheap ends up costing you money one way or the other. So I think our customer service team is really good. And yeah, our product's more expensive. It's made in the USA, but the service is instant. There's no waiting. You want to go on a trip, it starts tomorrow. You got something from Asia, it didn't work right. I can't go on my trip. No, you give us a call. The part's there the next day.
No, that makes a huge difference in a category like yours as well, where if a rack is missing a part, that might screw up an entire trip. Like, you have people want a quick
Absolutely.
turnaround response.
They want to, yes. And so we offer that service on our customer service side. We hope to not have, like every company, mistakes are made, or the customer orders the wrong rack, or whatever it might be. But we can service him right away. And our customer service, I think, in this industry is legendary. People just talk about it all the time. Like, oh, those guys just took care of me. They didn't even charge me for it. I'm like, yeah, because we want you to be happy. You already paid a premium price. You already bought from us. We'd like to keep that relationship going. And there's no better way than just to say, yes, we'll take care of it.
I spent a lot of time. This is actually kind of where I'm going full circle in my career. I started two websites. One called Consumerist, that was like that we ended up selling to Consumer Reports, that was heavily focused on advocating for consumers and good customer service. I actually started my career in customer service. So that was my first real job, was like a phone rep for AT&T back when that was actually really good work. Later on, helped start a site called Wirecutter, which was all about helping people figure out what is the right one to get. What's interesting now, though, and the reason that we're really pushing on American manufacturing, is we're finding in a lot of categories. I'm researching microwaves right now. There's a lot of categories where there's a giant gulf between uh, maybe if it's even built in the US anymore, it's ultra premium and you're paying a lot,
Right.
to a point where the low end version, I could buy 10 of the low end version and
Sure.
have it be disposable versus the high end one. But customer service really is a huge difference on a lot of it, is that I will pay the premium if I know that I can call somebody when I'm running into a problem, or, hey, I broke it myself. I just want to get a part from you. I don't want to have to buy the whole thing again. It's my fault. I'll pay for the part, but can you send me the part so
Yes.
I can keep the thing going and not have to throw it away again? That, I feel like, is also underserved these days, when it didn't used to be at all.
Yeah. Horrible. It is horrible. I mean, everything's designed to be throwaway. And it's like, oh, well, it's cheap, and then I'll just throw it away. Well, I mean, yes, our products are more expensive, but if you buy, let's say, a Tacoma, and then you still love the rack, and this happens to us every single day. Oh, but I bought a Chevy Silverado 6.5 foot. No problem, sir. Here are the parts you need.
Really? I didn't know that.
We will just sell him the individual little components so he doesn't have to throw the whole thing away. And it's all modular design. You can make it longer, wider. It's just a different set of components. So we will sell you just the components you need to move from there to there. And customers love that.
You started out in the adventure space, overlanding space. I always hesitate to use the word overlanding. It's so polluted now. But
We don't use it, but it's fine.
yeah, it is what you know
None
what
of
I'm
our
talking
marketing
about.
says.
Now that you've got the product dialed in and you've got enough of a manufacturing base, that you can start to look at other categories to start selling into. Where is the next set of customers for Leitner Designs?
We actually have been not transitioning. We're going to keep obviously manufacturing for the overland outdoor recreational space for eternity. Any business owner knows, got to keep finding new markets. And so what we're currently working on, we sell a lot to the lifeguards. So every LA lifeguard, Huntington Beach, Orange County, San Diego, all up and down our coast, every lifeguard has our rack on it. When they replace the old truck, they get rid of the old rack and the old truck, and they put it together with full Leitner kitting. We have showers that they can wash off wounds and stuff. We have these locking storage boxes with first aid kits in there, all the stuff they didn't even think about that they needed. We make all their custom mounts for their rescue boards. We make all the mounts. This is nothing that you can find on our website, but we do supply that to all the lifeguards, a full package that we call Marine Rescue. And it's specifically built for that purpose. Since it's all made in the USA, it's another positive because local governments are looking to, hopefully it's in their city. And if it's not in their city, hopefully it's in the state of California. And if it's not that, at least it's in the United States, right? So they're looking for that. So that's really good for us because we can say we're 100% or close to 100% of everything made here.
Beyond water rescue and lifeguard, do you have any other off the books packages for other disciplines?
Randomly enough, this keeps happening. On the East Coast, the government with a government credit card keeps buying racks for Toyota Tacomas and Hiluxes, and I think I don't know where they're going, but the address definitely shows some special forces stuff.
Every time that people try to track down a Hilux, when you see a Hilux on the road, it's almost always either from Mexico that's up here for a while on the 90-day pass or whatever it is that you can do, but it's almost always government special forces because they buy Hiluxes so they can be familiar with them when they go to other countries that have Hiluxes instead of Tacomas. Because for anybody that doesn't know, this isn't an automotive podcast, but the Tacoma is only sold in the U.S. It's made in Texas. It's a U.S. market product, very similar to a Hilux, which is the global pickup for Toyota. So you're selling special forces something for some reason.
The check is always good, but they're definitely outfitting some of these trucks. Where they go after that, I don't know.
It sounds like it's largely been word of mouth right now, but do you have any plans to try to position those markets for first responders and things like that?
Obviously we have a sales guy that is looking into those markets and reaching out to the municipalities. We could do forestry service. There's no reason our product wouldn't work for forestry service or the water district or things like that. So we do have sales. We're also building a website specific to that clientele. It'll be a separate website specifically for Leitner commercial.
What advice would you give a 25-year-old right now about starting a small, medium-sized manufacturing business in the U.S.?
You have to have an idea, and it doesn't even have to be the best idea. The most important thing is follow through on whatever idea you do have. There's just too many people that are like, I have the best idea ever. And then you talk to them a year later, I have the best idea ever. Well, just writing it all down in a journal, putting down what the steps will need to be to get to that. Every product I design, I have this freaking folder. It's this thick. And it just organizes everything I'm working on. And I like paper. Yes, I use a computer, but I like organizing it all in paper. And so I can go, okay, we've made this step. We've made this step. It is just tenacity. It is tenacity is 99% of it. There's no easy route. There's no secret to success. There's no, oh, this is how you do it. Okay, I'm going to do that. It is working at it every single day and just not giving up. Even if you have a bad day, which my company went out of business almost 3 times in the first 3 years, but somehow I just kept on going, Well,
double click that. What were the things that you screwed up or almost screwed up enough to be mortal that took the company down?
It was a brand new company. And truck bed racks cost $450 back then. And it was just a bent aluminum tube and a bent aluminum tube. And, that was the best you could get. And I come out with this rack that's $1,450. And it was a price shock to that market at that point in time. It is no longer a price shock. That's the other thing that people got to know. Well, this product is too expensive. Nobody's going to buy it. Somebody's going to buy it. might not be everybody. And yes, there's always the proper price tier to get most people to buy it. But there's no such thing as a too expensive of a product. It does not exist. You cannot have a product that is too expensive. Somebody will eventually buy it. That's why Lamborghinis and Ferraris and all those exist right along a Honda Accord. So yeah, I was overpriced getting into it, but I think I just fought through that and made a lot of videos and did a lot of, and I drove from dealer to dealer like a snake oil salesman when times got rough with a bunch of these in the back.
I want to push in on that too, because in my day job, we do a lot of this as well, which is positioning, right? It's you can move things up market if you have a better product. But the point I think you're making that a lot of people, especially people with just an idea who haven't built something before, may miss is that your product can be better and it can justify a higher price. But if you're moving the top of the market up, you've got to tell people that story. You've got to make them know why they want a better premium product and what experience it's going to be for them that the cheaper product isn't going to give them.
I mean, I got it from my dad. Don't design, you're coming up with a product. Your first thought should not be, what is the retail price going to be? That's what they teach you in business school. You can't, they're like, well, this product can only be $100. Well, why? Why can't it be a really good product for $250? I mean, I think people get too caught up in what the retail price of a product should be and then really limit their creativity in designing it.
Well, and you have an example with the ACS saying, we built this forged process because it was going to give us a better COGS for a new version, certainly when you get into man hours for all the welding. But then even from there, realizing actually there's another efficiency that we can do, but you found those efficiencies after the product was designed to this level that you wanted it to be.
Oh, absolutely. You're never done designing, right? The first one I thought was the greatest thing ever. And now I'm like, look at it. I'm like, I can't believe I made all those mistakes. I see too many people getting a product launched. It has to be 100% perfect. Well, even my new ACS Forged is not 100% perfect. And even the new one that I will make won't be 100% perfect. You got to launch a product, get it into the market, show people what it can do, and then make improvements on it. Henry Ford had the Model T. He didn't start with a new 2025 Lariat. That's what he did.
How much does customer feedback actually affect your design? Because I've been on both sides of it. I think it's great to listen to customers, but I think if you listen to all the customers, you'll lose the plot.
So our customer service department, again, make a list of every product that they say to do. And a lot of them are wacky. A lot of them are great. And so we absolutely take customer feedback. We absolutely do it. We just launched a new product called the Gatekeeper, and it's a gate for the back of the rack. Because people are like, well, I want to leave my dog back there for a bit, or something large that doesn't fit in the side storage gear pods that we make. So we're like, okay, so we made one. And so that's been a great seller. We just launched that like a couple of weeks ago. So that was not my idea. I actually fought that idea forever, going, nobody wants that. But then we had to solve a problem in manufacturing because every truck is a different width. And so what am I supposed to do? I came up with the number 64 different tailgates for all the different trucks I have out walking on the road. I'm like, I can't make 64 part numbers. So I spent some time and made this thing telescoping so one part number fits every rack we've ever sold.
Your product is a great one in that it is an ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody buys the rack, you're willing to sell them parts if they switch trucks.
Yep.
But they're also, once they're in, you're able to sell them accessories, whether they're ones they haven't bought yet or ones you haven't invented yet. Looking at it with the experience you have now, would you recommend to people that they look at things that have add-ons when they're designing and building companies, or is it something that is only convenient if you find your way into it?
I think it can go both ways. I mean, when I went into it, I only had three products that we call it accessorize the accessory. You sell them an accessory and then you sell them the accessories to it, right? We only had three. We had one little gear pod, a rooftop tent bracket, and a little thing to hold your jerry can. That's all we started with, right? But we did know we wanted it modular right out of the gate. I did right away know that that's what I wanted. I don't think every product needs to be like that to be a good product. Absolutely not. But I think this particular product lended itself to it because people wanted to make it their own, right?
All right, lightning round. First question: Rotopacks or jerry cans?
Jerry cans all day long. We do make Rotopax mounts and we make jerry can mounts, but I'm still an old school jerry can guy. Yep.
What's your current truck and motorcycle setup?
I wish I could take you out to the parking lot in the garage, but believe it or not, my favorite vehicle to drive right now is I have a Ford F-250. But I know this is an automotive podcast, but it has the best suspension lift made by Carly. It's what all the pre-runners run. Sits on 37, so comfortable to drive. It has everything on it. And I spend, you know, days and days in the desert. That's probably my favorite truck I currently own. And then on the motorcycle, hate to say it, it's the one that just broke my wrist 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. It's I have a Husky 501, like a desert bike, but I have a couple of Ducatis and some BMWs, just adventure bikes that I like taking down to Mexico as well.
Last question: EVs for your customer set. Have you seen Lightning? Seems fairly the same body basically. So Lightning seems straightforward, but have you seen much sales in the Rivian space? Or do you guys even make a rack that fits Rivians?
We do make obviously a Lightning rack only because it's the same exact body style as the F-150, which was great. We don't make a Rivian one currently. We're looking into it, but from what, Rivian's headquarters is 10 miles from me, right? So there's more Rivians here than you'll ever see anywhere else. So, and they just seem to be not accessorized. There's certain vehicles like a Toyota Tacoma. They sell 240,000 a year. Everyone accessorizes a Toyota Tacoma. You can sell endlessly to that market. Look at a Ford F-150. They sell 500,000. Certain vehicles are accessorized. Certain ones just tend not to be. And right now we haven't found a need for the Rivian. I haven't seen any accessorized yet.
Bernhard Leitner, thank you so much for coming on. LeitnerDesigns.com. If you are interested in his product, it is very good. And we'll talk to you soon.